Welcome back to TrueNAS Tech Talk. It's been a while since we've been here, so there's a lot for us to catch up on. Kris and I have been doing the spring trade show circuit. You might have seen us at the National Association of Broadcasters show, but we've been running around the world trying to figure out, what to bring people in the next iterations of TrueNAS, both from a software and a hardware perspective. We got a lot to go over today, from the hotfix of 25.10.3 landing in Mission Critical, some announcements on some upcoming hardware from TrueNAS, as well as some information and a lot about the upcoming TrueNAS 26. Stick around.
Welcome to another week of TrueNAS Tech Talk. We've been off for a few weeks. Busy life, busy schedule, all that good stuff. As usual, before we get started, don't forget to like and subscribe. Otherwise, I might have to do something cruel like make Kris clean his room, which I think maybe he already beat me to it. Okay, that isn't going to work this week. But
yeah, I beat you to the punch on that one, Kris. I think we'll consider that a little bit of penance for us not being here so often. How about that?
That works. Looks nice behind you. Nice and tidy. I like it.
Thank you very much.
Kind of like it back here. This is nice
exactly.
and tidy.
Look at that. Yeah. So part of the reason that Kris and I haven't been necessarily as available lately is, of course, we've been on that spring trade show circuit. We've been getting ready for a lot of exciting new things on the TrueNAS front, not just on the software level with TrueNAS 26, but also the new hardware selection, including the V series that we launched the first version of at the NAB show, the V160. We did make a point of sitting on the correct sides in that video, but we kind of forgot that because we were shooting it on a phone, it was going to mirror it automatically. So we got to apologize to those of you who got turned around by that. We do make an effort to make sure we're sitting on the same side every time, and looks like we got played.
I'm still surprised people get upset by that. It doesn't seem like that big a deal, but I know people routine and all that. I get it.
Exactly. Well, clearly somebody's watching this in split screen and they're overlaying one of us. So which one of us are you screening out? We want to know that.
That's right.
For our own vanity here. But speaking of that, I mean, the V series, I mean, it landed pretty well at NAB. It's been pretty highly anticipated. We ended up picking up an award there for Best in Show from ITPro. I think they were excited, but the general idea of, hey, we can have this high performance, high bandwidth machine. We don't have to sell any vital organs for this to pay for the high performance flash. It's a pretty good setup there.
Yeah, hybrid's a big deal, and the V series being able to accept both flash and spinning disks in the same system is awesome. So it means you can pay for the flash you need and not go overboard. But no, it's good stuff. It was great to see it pick up the Best in Show. A lot of excitement around that at the NAB conference. That whole conference was a madhouse to begin with. There was so many people there. It was a great time. Kris and I were thoroughly exhausted by the end of it, but a lot of cool stuff happening in the M&D space. Neat to see how AI is impacting that. And everybody's got different AI things popping up. It was cool. Yeah. Also, we get to meet a lot of cool fans and enthusiastic users.
TrueNAS is f***ing great.
Everyone coming by to talk to us who has used TrueNAS or are using TrueNAS currently, know us from the FreeNAS days. Pretty slick.
Yeah, we gave away a lot of free cookies there too, and I mean, I managed to hang through, and I didn't eat any of them. For those of us trying to watch our sugars, I did not eat a single cookie. I managed to make it through 4 days of us giving away cookies at our booth.
No. I think we need to paint the picture, Kris. It's not just giving away cookies; they were baking them.
They're fresh baked cookies.
So yes, I gave in and had my half a dozen cookies while I was there because it was over.
I'm not shaming you. I'm not shaming you at all, Kris.
Dude, it was cruel and unusual punishment to sit there and have to smell that all day. But it was awesome. People came in, they got a free warm cookie. It was amazing.
Yeah, you got to admit, when you set up a fresh baked cookie station, not that far from the registration desk, well, you're going to get people coming by your booth. It's a pretty great way to initiate some contact. Absolutely. But
no, it was good though, for sure. And we enjoyed the conversations we got to have with people afterwards. It was wonderful.
Exactly. We got some people attending the NLIT show, the National Labs IT show right now. There are going to be some additional trade shows and some additional work. I know we got some additional meetings going on. We got quarterly reviews, things like that. So Kris and I might be a little bit sporadic here. We do apologize for that. It's going to be a bit tough. Like we said, we're putting in a lot of work on the back end, I guess, and the front end with the trade shows. So hopefully we'll get to see a little bit more of you, but we'll let you know sort of as it goes how our schedule is going to
We will
Gonna
do the
pan
best
out.
we can, but hopefully it means we're hard at work in the background making TrueNAS more awesome, which is what you really want anyway. So let's be honest.
Exactly.
But speaking of making TrueNAS awesome, we did have a lot of stuff happen while we were away, so we do need to play a little bit of catch up here, I think, Kris, and we should probably start with the 2510.3 release that went out the door. And also the big news from this last week is that it got moved to mission critical. So nice to see that change happen. We've had some
Yep.
folks waiting on that.
Yeah, everybody's been waiting on 2504 saying, hey, I'm not going to upgrade to 2510 until it's mission critical. Well, your time is now. It's been moved there. 2510.3 is on that mission critical stage, which means it is ready for all of the users, including the enterprise users with the HA systems. We got quite a list of fixes in here. I don't know if we want to just skim those because we do have a lot of things to go through. Yeah, there's a lot to go through here.
It was a pretty packed release.
Yeah, so we got some fixes for block cloning between encrypted ZVOLs. Basically, it was saying, hey, are you actually authenticated to do this when it would do block cloning between two encrypted ZVOLs in the same pool? If they didn't have compatible encryption keys, it would actually say, hey, hold on, because these keys aren't compatible, the data's fine, but there's a mismatch with the authentication, and you actually can't read that clone. So it's going to do some verification that the keys will match and make sure that goes before it does a block clone on those. In the cases where it says I can't do this in an encryption safe way and I have to re-encrypt the data, well, then it's just not going to block clone it. It says, hey, I got to do this with separate encryption keys, separate IVs for the vectoring. I'm just going to do a standard normal clone. So you might see a little bit of change in that, but it's for safety and security first.
Absolutely. And then in the background, we also had some changes land related to Active Directory. There were some specific configurations that had some issues that would disallow private Kerberos settings. So some users and groups couldn't be resolved. That's been corrected. Glad to see that land. And then this one, I think a lot of the community folks who especially build homebrew systems have run into this. We fixed some pool creation errors on systems where you're using USB boot drives or other disks that might have duplicate serial numbers, which you may hit that inside VMs as well. So the disk availability check was incorrectly blocking certain drives that had the duplicate serial, even if they were unrelated to the new pool. That's been corrected now, so you can go ahead and do some USB boot pool goodness again if you'd like.
Yeah. In general, we don't recommend like a low endurance USB boot device.
Yes.
Like don't use some cheap, making sure I'm not going to show a brand here. Don't use a cheap USB stick that you just got somewhere from a throwaway place or a free giveaway.
Yeah.
Use like use a SATA to USB bridge, use SAS, use NVMe if you've got it, grab one of the tiny little Optane drives that are still available for a handful of dollars somehow in this economy.
Let's put it this way. If you bought the USB at a big box store or kind of a big box retailer and didn't pay for a quality one, yeah, maybe not.
Yeah,
so
probably not a good idea. You can also see this crop up if you use, external enclosures that connect via USB. We do also kind of caution about those. It's like they might have the bandwidth, but sometimes they don't present all the right information. But this should eliminate some of the false positives. So if you're on 2510.3 and you're still getting warnings about duplicate serial numbers, now it might be time to take a little bit of a stern look at your hardware and go, hey, is this guy messing with me?
All right, next up, we fixed some issues with log VDEV removals as well. So now you can go ahead and do that. Some systems had encountered failures during the log VDEV removal process. That's been corrected.
Yep. We fixed some link aggregation failover not working out of the box. Basically, there wasn't a polling interval that was configured correctly for interfaces that were using failover. So this isn't like an aggregation with simultaneous. This is just the standard failover back and forth. So we were having failures in failover. Those should be gone now.
Yeah, related to that was some of the things fixing Netlink socket errors as well, Kris, where we could have Netlink route operations colliding at a kernel level, which produced some Netlink socket busy errors a few folks had seen. This was mostly visible on bonded status alerts. So that does fix and serializes some Netlink route operations to prevent collisions. We have a retry limit now, some short delays between retries. So hopefully we're not just hitting those rare race condition windows where it's just at the wrong time. So that was good to see land as well.
Speaking of weird race condition windows, this one's primarily affecting the TrueNAS HA systems. It had to do with the non-transparent bridge. So that is like the PCI link that goes between the two halves of the system. Basically, it was, freeing and allocating so contiguous chunks of memory during the link up down event. So when a system is rebooted, power cycled, or a physical controller is pulled out of the shelf, sometimes that could fail in very specific circumstances, basically on a running system. And it could cause some issues where it goes, hey, I can't actually bring this link up. And you'd have a scenario where you'd say, well, ultimately you'd have to reboot your second controller again and say, well, roll the dice. We don't like that. Uncertainty and having to try and avoid race conditions is never fun, but we basically got rid of this one now.
Yeah, those are hard and tricky ones to diagnose because they are so rare to hit and they're very specific to timing. Again, when you're talking about memory allocations and trying to find contiguous blocks, you may never hit it. And a lot of users and customers never have and never will. But, I was glad we were able to track that one down. Those are really deep. And then next up, some stale NFS handles for ZFS snapshot could not be recovered without a client reboot. So that's been corrected now, so you won't have to restart your client on the NFS side after a failover, snapshot expiration, or various auto mount failures. So that's good. Basically, it's all about invalidating bad cache information, which is good. And I think we had some other doc improvements here around kind of drive health monitoring as well. How we monitor through ZFS real-time failures, different polling of different things like smart, different alert filtering as well, and also some manual smart testing schedules available. That's up in the docs page now as well if you want to take a look at the drive health management tutorials.
Yeah, we'll drop a link in the description below for everybody to read out on those and see sort of how the changes in drive health management, we'll try not to shorten it to DHM all the time, but how those will impact you and how you can continue to expand your testing functionality, make sure you're keeping your data safe.
I don't know. We like acronyms, Kris. We're engineers, so this is why it's going to be DHM.
Alphabet soup is coming. Well, speaking of the alphabet soup, let's go from DHM to CVEs. And, we just finished 2510.3, but we did just drop a little hotfix here of 2510.3.1. What do we have in here? We're talking about CVEs. We're talking about AIs, and CVSSs.
It's literally pushing out the door as we record right now. So by the time you're watching this, it's probably been out for at least a day or two. So 2510.3 has dropped. That will, of course, become the new mission critical release. It includes some important CVE mitigations, most notably for the copy fail, kind of the high profile one. Again, the specific attack vector does not directly affect TrueNAS because of ZFS, but we're still incorporating upstream kernel patches, security best practices, and are going to go ahead and fix the underlying issue. So this is interesting. And again, this is where I think we just take a moment to let folks know, this is going to be an interesting year because of what's happening with the AI space and with these tools being better at being able to create, proof of concept exploits or go explore areas where there's suspected potential security exploits. And then an AI can find ways to exploit those quickly with very little token cost too, which is amazing. We're going to be probably seeing a lot more hot fixes this year. And it's not TrueNAS specific. This is industry wide. If you're running any kind of Linux or any kind of software in general, let's just say this is the year to stay really sharp and crisp on your patching practices. You want to stay up to date. So yes, I'm updating my routers. I'm updating all my devices, my smart devices at the house, all of it, my home assistant containers, like all that good stuff. This is, again, where you should be paying attention to all these CVEs coming out because I have a feeling we're going to see a lot in the next 6 to 12 months.
There's going to be quite a few of them, and that's a good point to raise about your containers as well. So again, you might see a raft of us updating Docker apps. If somebody else is running you're running your own custom Docker solutions there, custom things, containers, VMs. Hey, it's a good chance to look through and say, make sure you update all of that stuff. VMs provide a little bit more isolation than a container does, but you still probably don't want somebody rooting some machine that you've got it hosted as a VM. Yeah. Still gives them a pivot point into the rest of your network.
And I'll just be honest, I'm being paranoid, Kris, because I know some projects will be pushing updates out without necessarily calling out that it's fixing vulnerabilities. Sometimes they keep those things on the down low. So I'm just assuming every update's vital for a while here. That's just important.
Yeah, I'm looking at patch notes and I'm running through things. A lot of the stuff, there's been those weird supply chain attacks too. So sometimes, you've got a component that's frozen at a certain patch level. So you're trying to prevent against a supply chain. But hey, when you get a notification that there's a new patch out, go look there, see if they fix something really critical. And you probably want to get on those sooner rather than later.
Yep, agreed.
Yeah. Okay. Well, how about a non-CVE fix? Yeah. How about a non-CVE fix in here? We fixed something for Kerberos secured NFS mounts failing after an HA failover setup where, the NFS service wasn't configured to start automatically. That's a good one. I mean, yeah.
That's a good one for a hotfix release. But again, I think most folks are going to be looking at that CVE and saying, that's the reason I'm mashing the upgrade button over the next 24 hours. So please do get your updates done this weekend. You got a good weekend coming up to get it done. I know I'm applying mine right after the show here.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, hey, that's it for 2510.3.1, our little micro hotfix there. But let's go look a little bit forward into the future. We've had 26 beta 1 has been out for a little bit while here. Maybe let's just sort of recap what we've got coming there. I mean, the beta 1's out. We're looking at a beta 2 and probably sometime in the summerish.
The
early
next
summer.
30 to 45 days or so. We've already internally begun the code freeze process and started doing testing of the release. That's great. Obviously, things are going to be a little disrupted as these hot fixes land. So that does impact some of the work we do on 26 as the team has to go and change focus to getting a CVE response out the door. But that's good. That's all natural. It's
a little more crucial there. Yeah. But the one big thing, is that because it's TrueNAS 26, again, like we said back when we introduced it, some of you picked up on it. It means that we're going to an annual release cadence here, simplified version numbering just with a 2-digit year. We're ditching the fish code names. For those of you who enjoyed the pun with scale and all the fish, we do apologize for that. But we are going to go for the straightforward version numbers. We're going to have, TrueNAS 26.0 on its initial launch. It's going to turn into 26.1. We're going to be giving it feature packs, security updates, hot fixes throughout the year, but it's just going to mean you get a more predictable upgrade cycle and you're getting some more extended testing periods. Some people were saying, hey, where's 26.04? Well, in the same way that a lot of you waited for 25.10 to reach mission critical before you update, it's kind of the same idea here. In this fall, 26.0 is going to come out, and we expect it to be at this sort of mission critical level readiness where you can just go out and say, hey, 26.0 is out. I'm ready for it. And you could just jump straight into it in sort of a general release kind of practice.
Yeah. Having these extended pre-release periods is super vital to that. Obviously, we were moving fast before with the twice-a-year releases, but being able to take and do these longer beta 1, beta 2 release candidate cycles is fantastic. And we've seen a ton of people already adopt the beta. Thank you. I know a lot of folks are waiting for hardware reasons, wanted the newer kernel, so that's great. Glad you picked it up. Please do keep the bug reports coming in because that means beta 2 will be even better. And by the time we get to RC1, you're going to be seeing that more like a .0 that we used to release with the biannual cadence. So no, it's good stuff. But apart from the annual release cadence and simplified versioning and the dropping of the fish names, we also have all the other goodness that landed in 26 and that are available in the beta now, such as the web sharing with TrueSearch/Spotlight support. You can go ahead and give that a whirl. We would love to get some feedback there.
Yeah, that's really good. We got containers as a fully supported feature in TrueNAS 26. We introduced those in 2504. So those are your sort of lightweight isolated environments. They share the host kernel, they maintain their own file system, and they're basically a more efficient way of doing virtual machines. We're also extending the support in TrueNAS 26 to our enterprise systems with HA, so you can now have container failover between controllers. Of course, you got to have a static IP configuration on those containers so that they know where to go. But this is a great way for those of you who are still on TrueNAS Core and we're waiting for something really solid to migrate your jails to. This is where you're going to be able to say, hey, containers are ready for me. LXC is pretty robust. And now we've got all the support and the scaffolding in place in TrueNAS 26, where you could confidently say it's time to take my jails and bring them into, the new version of TrueNAS.
Which again, that is a bit of a process because you're moving from FreeBSD and PKG and all that to pick your Linux distro of choice. I would use a Debian, so it's apt, but you could just as easily go deploy some Red Hat derivative or something else. I don't know what if other people want to run Arch in there. Do whatever you want.
Somebody's going to run Arch and mention it to us that they run Arch, by the way.
Of course, they'll have to let us know about it, but anyway, no, it's good. At least people have options now. So you have a variety of distros, a variety of different package managers to choose from, variety of different distros, different release cadences, kind of security postures, all that good stuff. And that's going to be available now and is working on beta. I'm using it here. It's pretty nice. It's convenient. But hopefully any of you folks who are still using jails have a nice opportunity to go and get into a little bit more modern Linux distribution.
Yeah, there's a couple of neat little SMB fixes that we'll go into before we get into the meat of the OpenZFS changes. So we've got stateful failover for our enterprise systems for SMB, basically maintaining session state across failover events. So you'll be able to, just continue on your SMB client copies without reauth after failovers. We'll have some details in that in our docs when that one is released out and made live on enterprise systems. And then we also integrated that TrueNAS Spotlight search as TrueSearch directly into SMB share. So for everybody running Mac OS, you'll be able to just have a Spotlight index stored there and search your file contents directly on SMB. So, finally trying to put the last few nails in AFP's coffin here for all the Spotlight extensions.
Yeah, no, it is pretty handy. Yes, I'm running it here on my MacBook, and it's handy to be able to search instantly and search inside some of the contents of files too. So it's good stuff.
Exactly. Well, let's get into the meat and potatoes here. The big thing in TrueNAS 26 a lot of people are waiting for is the next OpenZFS release. So we've got OpenZFS 2.4. I think specifically the .1 in there is coming in right now. We'll see what happens with point releases as we get closer to our own release. But man, there's a lot of stuff in OpenZFS 2.4 here, Kris.
It's a lot. I mean, there's improvements to things like quotas, allowing users to set default user group project quotas, uncached I/O, which is direct I/O fallback to a lightweight uncached I/O when it's unaligned. We got unified allocation throttling. We also have some new algorithms designed to reduce VDEV fragmentation. I mean, this is all great stuff. A lot of performance improvements, which I'm proud to say a lot of our team was involved in helping on this, but better encryption performance using AVX2 for AES GCM. That's awesome.
There's some good ones. Others? Yeah, there's a good chunk of it, especially with your special VDEVs, and it's great timing for this with the challenges everybody's facing around the NVMe and NAND flash pricing. So there's been some changes to special VDEVs in OpenZFS 2.4. One of them is that you can now create your special VDEVs with things other than mirrors. So you can use RAIDZ special VDEVs if you're looking for a little bit of increased capacity in there and maybe additional redundancy if you want to do a RAIDZ 2. But you can extend those special VDEVs. They can now hold ZVOL rights. You can set your thresholds into non-power of two values because you used to have to say, hey, I need to have like 64K. My next jump is 128, then it's 256. You can have a little bit more granularity in there for precision when you're doing it. And one of the other big things is your ZIL, the slog portion, your write log, can now actually reside optionally on those special VDEVs. If you don't have a separate SSD that you want to use as a log device, you can say, I'm going to build a special VDEV out of some, decently performing and power fail safe SSDs. I'm going to put my ZIL there, and that can act as your accelerator for your write log. So it's a nice way to sort of, it's almost like we're taking steps toward having a full tiering system available in OpenZFS and TrueNAS.
Yeah, sure seems like it. Yeah. There is a lot of interesting stuff happening in the special VDEV space. I know there's one that hasn't landed in this release of OpenZFS yet, Kris, but somebody's working on a store all my Uber blocks specifically on the special VDEVs and avoid the data VDEVs. Well, why does that matter? Well, if we ever want to get to the point where we can allow people to put their data drives to sleep, it'd be great if we're not writing Uber blocks constantly to them and waking them up as well. So that's kind of the missing ZFS piece. You need to make that a properly supported feature down the road.
Exactly. You don't want to have your drives going to sleep and them being several Uber blocks behind on the transaction groups. That results in bad things if some of those drives decide not to wake up and or you lose power before those writes are committed. Sometimes that's a problem.
Yeah, but other good stuff. There's some convenience options for being able to do scrubs, trims, or initialize all imported pools. There's some all flags now you can pass. There's also some nice scrub options that could be used to scrub specific time ranges. That's pretty slick. I can see that we will take advantage of some of that. Prefetching for the block cloning table as well can be done. Get that performance out. That's great. And then I believe also some encrypted permission features have been fixed for sends.
Yeah, there's a bunch of other fixes in there, like lots of things around gang block improvements. There's bunches of new optimizations around block cloning and dedupe as well. So you should see some, performance improvements for that. But I think a lot of people are going to be interested in, like I said, the topology restrictions on the special VDEVs, the additional things that you can do. So people are probably going to start exploring those a little bit more. And again, it's worth repeating once more. Let's punch this bottle of Elmer's again. If you're experimenting with special VDEVs, hey, they're a critical part of the pool. Make sure they're redundant. And now with the changes and relaxations on the topology restrictions, you'll be able to do that a little bit stronger. You can say, hey, I don't just have to mirror them anymore. I'm going to make a Z2. I'm going to get a bunch of small drives, and I'm going to put my metadata on there. And, let's just see how this goes.
Yeah, no, that's good stuff. And of course, we had mentioned a little earlier, but it bears mentioning again, this is the release that has the updated Linux 6.18 LTS kernel. So that does add support for some new classes of hardware. And also because it's an LTS, it's what we'll be using to pull all of these probable security updates that come in from the upstream kernel here over the next couple of years. But good stuff. Excited to see that land. I'm already seeing some people try it with new different hardware, especially some of the video cards that have some better support now.
I was going to say, I've seen positive reports from the Intel Arc B series users. They're saying like, hey, I've got a B50 Pro, that little half height doesn't require additional power. They said it's working great. I'm using it for transcoding it. Somebody's using it for AI usage. So they're saying, hey, that's working now. That's going to be a big advantage there. But it's any other kind of weird esoteric hardware that doesn't necessarily work right under 25.10. It's got a much better chance of working properly under TrueNAS 26.
Okay, well, before we wrap up here today, we have one good question that I wanted to address from Sean, who asked something on the forums and then emailed it in. And I kind of was keeping the powder dry because I was like, this is a good discussion to have on the T3 podcast where I can get into some of the nuance versus trying to summarize it into a small text reply. But what he asks is, out of curiosity, why did you not just reuse an existing open source Docker management program? And he throws Dockage out, for example. He said he doesn't personally use that, but that's just one of several. He said, seems like there's a number of Docker management applications around. And of course, he doesn't want to go down to the rabbit hole of which one is better. They all have their reasons for existing. Everybody has their favorite. He's just more curious on the philosophy of why TrueNAS doesn't use an existing application and just slot it into the GUI instead of rolling our own. Was it some quirk of licensing, he said, or other reasons? That's a great question, Sean. I'm glad you asked, because there are a lot of nuances to this answer, and it's for a host of reasons. Obviously, licensing is one concern, because some licenses are easier to work with than others. Also, because most of those projects are designed to be run standalone on a variety of different Linux systems, for example. And so they'll end up having a lot of features and functionalities that don't necessarily play well on a TrueNAS. We've run into this before, because we actually have attempted this at previous times to go bring in kind of a pre-baked solution. And then you end up having to go remove features, take things out, turn things off, because guess what? That doesn't play right with our version of ZFS, or it doesn't work on the Debian base we have, or this version of the kernel. So you end up almost soft forking a project. And then you get into the situation where you forked a mature project, and then how do you collaborate with upstream? Because they're opinionated. They have their own vision and direction and things they're trying to accomplish, but don't always align with, we need this to work well on ZFS, right? We need this to work well with TrueNAS. We need it to operate well with how we do SMB shares, whereas those guys are like, oh, we don't even care. Like, that's not our use case. We don't care how it works with an NFS share in the background, or how it tramples or doesn't trample on an LXC container. All right.
Yeah, or even something like permission expectations. I know that's always a fun one to deal with, even in our own catalog, is all of these apps have their own expectations for, hey, I'm gonna run as this user.
Yeah.
I want this kind of permission set. And, when you pass it a mounted volume or something, it just says, well, I'm going to go in and stomp all over all of the ACLs you previously set up. And
sure. Or worse yet, they don't support the NFS v4 style ACLs because Linux generally doesn't support that. It's something we had to do specific to TrueNAS to kind of bring that feature-rich NFS v4 and WinACL experience into TrueNAS, which we had on the core side. So there's a whole host of reasons. At the end of the day, yes, for something as vital as, for example, container management on TrueNAS, sure, we could go bolt something on. And we actually do allow you to install things like Dockage, for example, or Portainer via our app catalog, which if you want to go manage your own thing, you can. But that's just a different experience guarantee, because again, there could be things that work or don't work, or clunkiness that, because they don't test and develop it on ZFS. They're assuming you have ext4 or something under the hood, or they're assuming you're not going to run it on the same box as LXC containers, or these kind of shares in the background, or how we set up and manage users and permissions and all those other good things. So at the end of the day, a lot of these tools, we're going to end up rolling our own and baking it in so it's a first-class citizen because we have to support it. And I can't, when we're doing things on the enterprise size, I can't just say, oh, well, sorry, we didn't write that, so you're just going to have to live with bugs. Like that's not a good excuse. That's not what you want to hear from your enterprise vendor ever. So no.
Yeah. We try not to, just to have people think of us as we're just some amalgamation of a bunch of different parts. It's no, we own this stuff. We have our way of having to support this and having our, we're taking responsibility for everything that comes out under our name in that sense.
Yeah. At the end of the day, we're the ones getting on the support call in the evening when somebody hits an issue or whatever. And it's really hard sometimes to say, sorry, that's an upstream bug. Yeah. And, we, at the end of the day, we have to be responsible to resolve it and make sure the customer's happy and their system's operating the way it should. So yes, that's why we hand roll a lot of things. Now, does it mean we do that for everything? No, of course not. We obviously collaborate with OpenZFS, Samba, other tools, but, we're very involved with a lot of these projects to make sure that how they're developed, how they work, future versions will work for us on the TrueNAS side. And we have to own it and sometimes maintain our own kind of soft forks, if you will, to go and make sure that it works properly on TrueNAS. Of course, we contribute everything back upstream we can, but there are cases where you can't. For example, we'll just pick on the NFS v4 ACLs for a second. So sure, we take the Linux kernel and then we soft fork it and we apply some patches to make it do things appropriately on the TrueNAS side, such as NFS v4 ACLs. Could we contribute that upstream? Well, maybe. I don't think upstream. There's been discussion about this in the past, and let's just say the reception to bringing this kind of functionality into upstream Linux hasn't been well received. So no, we have to maintain that patch. We have to soft fork it, and we have to own that, and that's an expensive operation. That takes time. That takes kernel engineers. We have to maintain it, test it, and do all that good stuff. But at the end of the day, it's so you get that experience where, hey, all my ACLs work, and I didn't have to think about it. That's something, if you're home brewing and doing it on your own, you got to own that, and you're out there applying diffs and patches and recompiling, and that's where it gets tricky. That's why people, default to using kind of a pre-built appliance like TrueNAS, because we've had to do all that hard work for you.
Yeah, I mean, benefit from the hard work that our engineering team has done, and it's great to be able to have somebody else handling that kind of work for you.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So that makes it a little bit more than just an amalgamation of parts that you've cobbled together off of just pick your random Linux distro of choice. So anyway, that's the kind of polish we strive to bring, and the excellence we strive for as a company and ourselves and our products. And that, to answer your question, is why we don't just slot some random application in and YOLO and say, here you go, have fun.
Yeah, but if you guys want to slot some random applications in there, hey, we give you all the tooling necessary to do it, whether you want to do it as a Docker container, LXC, or a VM on top. We want to say, hey, if you guys, we're not necessarily going to do that, but if you want to, hey, here's toolbox is open. Have at it.
It's better for us to work hard on making sure the sandboxes that we provide are full featured and functional. That's why we support VMs, Docker, and LXC now. Because as long as those pieces are well supported, then you have the freedom to go and do whatever the heck you want. You want to go install, again, Arch, because that's you. Go install Arch and set up your own LXC container and manage that to your heart's content. Have fun with it. You have all the freedom to do that. But TrueNAS has provided you this kind of rock solid base to do that from. That's what you want at the end of the day. Your system's protected. Your data's protected. We'll stay stable. We'll handle the finicky kernel bits that you maybe don't want to have to go manage by hand.
Yeah. Well, that was a great question, spawned a great discussion, and we really appreciate it every time people throw us these curveballs that we kind of have to say, this is going to require a little bit more to dig into. It gives us a chance to jump down a rabbit hole and show you all a little bit of what's going on behind the scenes and our design philosophy and, what goes through our minds every day at work.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, so thank you, Sean. Appreciate it. Appreciate your patience. I know you asked this several weeks ago, and I told you, hang on, it's coming. But appreciate you waiting for the answer, and hopefully that answered your question well.
Yeah. Well, I think that about wraps it up for our show today, Kris. We had quite a bit of interesting discussion about, things that are coming out now and coming out in the future. So hopefully, for those of you running 25.10, you should go out and grab that patch, that 2510.3.1. Again, it's ready for production. It's ready for you to go out there and grab and, secure your environment. Make sure you are all locked down and ready for prevention against anything that else is being spawned from the wild world of AI-based CVEs. And then for those of you who are getting a little bit more experimental, you want to jump onto the TrueNAS 26 beta. Hey, that's out there too. If you're jumping on there, please feel free to give us some more feedback. I saw, like I said, those community users reporting success with the B series GPUs. If you've got something else like that you want to try out, please jump on, give us that feedback. Feel free to let us know on social media or in our own forums there. But I think that's about it for today, Kris. It was a pretty good show.
Yeah.
It was good to catch up with everybody, and we're hoping it's not going to be as long between the next one, but we do have a couple things coming up in the next, I think, week or two, Kris. Yeah. So we'll try to get back to you as soon as possible. For those of you out in the audience.
Meantime, again, please remember, like, subscribe, ring the bell, do all the usual things, drop us comments, send emails. We're happy to answer questions when and where we can. But, we're looking forward to the summer months as well here. So it's going to be a few weeks in between episodes, definitely. So we'll be talking to you again here soon and look forward to next time.